My name is Harriet Langford. I'm 62 years old and I live in Portland, Oregon. I used to be a high school principal, the kind who knew every student's name by the third week of school and who always brought cookies to faculty meetings. These days, my life is quieter. My husband passed 5 years ago, and my days now begin with coffee a crossword and a bit of morning sunlight warming the kitchen tiles. It was a Saturday, a gray morning, the kind Portland wears like a well-worn sweater. The hydrangeas outside the window were still sleeping off winter, and Hemingway, my cat, was curled up on the radiator. It was around 8:15 a.m. when I opened my laptop and saw an email from Claire, my daughter. The subject line said, "Final Wedding Update." I remember smiling. My Claire had always been a bit dramatic with headlines, so I expected a long list of details, maybe new flower arrangements or a change in the reception playlist. Instead, the message was just 4 lines. She wrote that due to limited space and preferences from Julian's family in Paris, they had made the difficult choice for me to attend the wedding via live stream. There were intimacy concerns from his side. I would get a private link soon, she said. The email ended with "Hope you understand." LOL. No greeting, no warmth, just that. I reread it, then again. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. For a moment, I thought I had missed something. Maybe another message was on the way, something that explained this better. But that was it. I wrote back. 1 sentence. That's your decision. Thank you for letting me know. I pressed send and closed the laptop gently like I was setting down something fragile that no longer worked. The room didn't change. The fridge still hummed. The rain still tapped gently on the skylight above the kitchen. But something inside me had gone completely still. I washed my cup, fed Hemingway, took out the recycling. Everything moved the way it always did, only slower. I had planned to drop by the bookstore that afternoon, maybe pick up that new novel I kept hearing about. But instead I sat at the kitchen table for a long while, staring at the back fence. Claire used to paint her name on that fence when she was little. Purple block letters. The paint faded years ago, but sometimes in the right light I swear I can still see the outline. I opened the drawer where I had tucked away the wedding quilt I spent 6 months stitching. Claire always said she loved handmade things. I'd matched the colors to her childhood bedroom. Soft blue, a touch of rose, and small embroidery on the corner. Her initials. I folded it again slowly, put it back. By 10:30, I started reorganizing the spice cabinet. Anything to keep moving. I took out the rosemary I dried myself and set it aside. The glass jar had a crack in it. I replaced it. Later, I went for a walk. Same path I always took. Around the block, past the rose garden, down to the community center where I used to volunteer for reading hour. I passed 2 women walking hand in hand. They laughed. One of them tossed her head back the way Claire used to when I told stories at the dinner table. I looked down and adjusted my scarf. At the corner cafe, I paused but didn't go in. Not today. The smell of fresh bread brought back too many memories. Claire and I used to sit by the window there, sipping lattes and people watching. She always ordered almond croissants. Back home, I turned on the classical station. Chopin played softly. I peeled carrots and roasted them with honey and thyme. I made wild rice and broiled a small piece of salmon. It was the kind of meal you make when you need to remember you still deserve good things. The day passed. I watered the plants, paid a bill, replied to an old friend's text with a thumbs up. Around 4:45, I folded laundry. The sky turned a darker shade of gray. When night came, I didn't feel tired, but I went to bed. I didn't read. I didn't turn on the TV. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan spinning its slow rhythm. I wasn't angry. That's what surprised me. I wasn't even shocked. Somewhere deep inside, I think I already knew. I had watched myself slowly become optional. The little signs, the fewer calls, the way updates came through Jacob now, not from Claire herself. Still a live stream. I woke the next morning before the sun. It was just after 6. I stood by the window and watched the light arrive soft and cold. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened the file cabinet in the hallway and pulled out the folder labeled Estate. I took out the trust papers, the savings account summary, the house deed, all of it. I made a cup of tea, sat down, and started thinking. Not about revenge, not even about disappointment, but about what to do with this new quiet space Claire had carved out of my life, and whether I was ready to fill it with something that finally belonged to me. The bank lobby was quiet when I arrived just after 9:30 in the morning. Light filtered through the high windows, painting sterile lines on the gray carpet. I waited at the front desk, purse in hand, my fingers wrapped around the small folder I had labeled Wedding Transfer. A young man named Austin greeted me. He had helped me before, cheerful and polite, in the way people fresh to life often are. We walked to his desk, tucked into a corner with a plastic plant by the monitor. I sat down, crossed my ankles, and opened the folder. I told him I wanted to cancel the scheduled wire transfer, $50,000, scheduled to go out 2 days from now. He blinked twice. He asked if something had changed. I said yes. He glanced at the file again, probably seeing the note about the previous $28,000 already transferred months ago. I could feel his curiosity waiting to be polite. He asked me if I was sure. I said I was. He nodded and typed a few things, then asked for one more confirmation. I signed the form with my maiden name, something I hadn't done in years. It felt right. I thanked him. He said he hoped everything would work out. I smiled, but it wasn't the kind people return. Outside, the breeze had picked up. I pulled my scarf tighter and walked 3 blocks to the parking garage. It was late morning now. The sun had pushed past the clouds, but it didn't feel warm. At home, I took off my coat and placed the folder in the drawer where I keep old tax returns and family recipes I no longer use. Then I walked to the small wine cabinet in the corner of the dining room. The bottle was a gift, a Cabernet from a vineyard in Washington State. Claire and I had picked it out together during a weekend trip years ago. She said we should open it at her wedding. I uncorked it. The sound was soft. I poured a glass and carried it to the back porch. The sky was pale. The neighbor's dog barked in the distance. I sat on the old wicker chair and watched the birch tree sway, its leaves just beginning to change. I held the glass in my hand, but didn't drink. Not right away. There was no celebration, no toast, just the slow, steady realization that I had finally drawn a line. And for the first time in a long while, it felt like that line was for me. Jacob showed up around 4:15 in the afternoon. I had just set the kettle on for tea when I saw his truck pull into the driveway. He didn't call ahead. He rarely did. He walked in like he always had the right to, smiled, kissed my cheek, then glanced around as if expecting a fight waiting on the coffee table. I stayed quiet. He sat down in the armchair, leaned back like a man ready to negotiate. He said Claire told him I was upset about the wedding plans, that I was being unfair, that I needed to think bigger than myself. I poured the hot water over the tea bags and let them steep. My back was to him, but I could feel the tone in his voice shift. I brought over 2 mugs, placed them on the table, and sat across from him. He reached for his cup, then paused. He asked why I was being so difficult about this. He said he understood it stung, but that it was not a reason to make a scene. I told him I hadn't been invited to the wedding. Not really. I had received a link, a live stream link. No conversation, no seat at the table, no mother of the bride. He blinked confused, then shrugged. Said weddings were different now. Said maybe I was reading too much into it. I asked if he would feel the same if his daughter emailed him not to come just to watch from home. He didn't answer. Instead, he told me I had a way of turning things into drama, that I made everything harder than it needed to be. Something inside me shifted, but I didn't raise my voice. I told him I was no longer accepting that kind of talk in this house. He looked startled. I repeated it, slowly, calmly. Then I stood and told him he should go. He stared at me for a long moment, then muttered that I was being ridiculous, that Claire was right to keep things simple. I didn't follow him to the door. I didn't explain myself again. I just stood by the table hands around the warm mug and listened to the sound of the truck backing out. When the house was quiet again, I sat down and took a sip. The tea had gone lukewarm, but I drank it anyway. That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time in weeks. I wrote that boundaries are not punishments. They are doors you choose to close when someone forgets how to knock. And for once, I slept all the way through. The first message came at 7:25 in the morning. One line. Things have changed. Can we talk? By 8:40, another. I know the email was harsh. I was stressed. This wedding is so complicated. By 9:10, a third. We might have to move the venue. There's been a mistake with the deposit. I just need a little help, Mom. I didn't reply to any of them. I turned off notifications and went to fold laundry. The morning was quiet. Gray light slid across the floor of my kitchen. I made oatmeal and sliced half a banana. I sat at the table and ate slowly, watching a crow hop across the backyard fence. Another message. Please, if you help me now, we can revisit the invitation thing. I promise. Just please, I'm begging. I turned off my phone and set it inside the drawer under the coffee filters. At 11:30, Mr. Abrams knocked at my back door with a plastic container of pasta salad. We had planned lunch earlier in the week. I opened the screen and smiled. He gave a small wave like he always did, like he wasn't sure if he was interrupting something. We sat out on the porch. I poured 2 glasses of iced tea. He talked about his garden and how the tomatoes were late this year. I listened. He asked about the wedding. I hesitated. Then I told him a little. Not everything. Just enough. He didn't offer advice. Just nodded. Then he said something that stuck. Sometimes silence is a boundary too. We sat quietly for a while. The wind rustled through the maple tree. A child rode by on a scooter singing something out of tune. After he left, I checked my phone. The last message had come in at 12:15. I can't believe you're doing this to me. After everything. Everyone thinks you're being cruel. I put the phone back down and turned on the radio. Later that afternoon, I logged onto Facebook. Not to post, just to check. And there it was. A long post from Claire. Public. It talked about how some people let you down at the worst time. How even family could be selfish and heartless. There were a few vague comments about how money reveals true character. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. The comments came quickly. Friends sympathizing, old acquaintances offering hugs. A cousin saying how sorry she was that Claire had to go through this. I didn't comment. I didn't message her. I didn't write a post of my own. Instead, I pulled out the jigsaw puzzle I had started last month and set it on the dining room table. The sky pieces were still a mess. I sorted them slowly, one by one. There was peace in that. Something steady. At 4:30, I made a pot of chili and let it simmer. I cut cornbread from a batch I'd frozen last week. By 5:15, the house smelled warm. Full. That night, as I got ready for bed, I thought about what Mr. Abrams had said. Silence is a boundary. And I realized I wasn't punishing Claire. I was protecting myself. I lay in bed with the window open. The breeze was cool against my skin. At 6:55 the next morning, another message came in. Mom, I know you're hurt, but please don't let this ruin everything. Can we fix this? I didn't delete it. I didn't answer. I just let it be. It was around 7:15 in the evening when I heard the knock. I was in the garden kneeling by the thyme hand still buried in warm soil. The summer light stretched long and golden across the backyard, casting quiet shadows over the hydrangeas. I took my time standing. Another knock followed, soft or uncertain. I walked to the side gate and opened it without a word. Claire stood there. Her face was bare, no makeup, no smile. The silkiness of Paris had faded from her, replaced by something quieter, something honest. She clutched nothing in her hands. She wore travel clothes, and looked tired in a way that didn't come from jet lag. We didn't hug. I gestured toward the back porch. We sat down in the old wicker chairs, surrounded by the sounds of bees finishing their day and the wind brushing through ivy. I poured 2 glasses of water. The silence between us held steady, neither sharp nor soft, just real. Claire looked down at her glass, then up at the garden. She said she knew the wedding falling apart wasn't the worst thing. The worst was realizing what she'd done. She said she hadn't let herself feel it until the morning after, when the hotel suite was quiet and her phone had stopped buzzing. She said she used to think I would always be there no matter how I was treated, that mothers absorb things, that love means staying silent. But this time she said something shifted. The silence I gave her wasn't passive. It was a choice, and that made her look at herself. I didn't speak. I watched her face, the same one I used to see sleeping in a car seat, now trying to find the words to come home. She said she wasn't asking to be forgiven in one afternoon. She just wanted to stand here and say she was sorry, really sorry, for all of it. I listened. Then I stood, stepped inside for a moment, and came back with a manila envelope and a folded brochure. I placed them on the table between us. The envelope held a round-trip ticket from Paris to Portland. The brochure showed smiling elders painting beside volunteers. At the top it read, Senior Care Companions, helping the forgotten feel seen. I told her that healing doesn't come from begging for it. It comes from showing up again and again, even when it's awkward or humbling or hard. I told her I couldn't offer a clean slate, but I could offer a beginning. If she wanted to rebuild something, it wouldn't start with words. It would start with presence, with doing the quiet work of tending to people the world had stopped looking at, just like she had done to me. Claire nodded, slowly. Her hands folded over the envelope like it was something fragile. We sat for a few more minutes, listening to the birds settling into the trees. The sky had turned pale orange. Light clung to the tops of the leaves. Then she stood, not quickly, not dramatically, just with the calm of someone who had nothing left to hide. She thanked me, not with a speech, just a few words spoken plainly. She walked back toward the gate, the envelope tucked under her arm. I stayed where I was, watching her figure grow smaller beneath the archway of climbing roses. She paused just before stepping through. Her hand rested on the gate a moment, then slipped away. As the latch clicked behind her, I looked out at the garden again. The air was still warm. Bees had vanished. The scent of basil drifted up from the pots near my feet. Something had shifted, not loudly, but enough to feel it, and that was more than enough for now.